Welcome to Myth Informed with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Brian, tell us the secret of who we're talking to today.
The secret who we're talking today is Claudia the Wine Ant, aka the Ranting Feminist. She, her pronouns. YouTube feminist. She was dubbed the Wine Ant a while ago by some radio buff, but you're reclaiming it. Okay, the Ranting Feminist is the Wine Ant. What happened?
Claudia, by the way.
Claudia. It was Claudia Brown. I kind of just named myself the Wine Ant on Twitter because there were some far right people calling me a wine aunt, so I just kind of went, I like that. I'm gonna take that now.
But what's that mean? Like, is that supposed to be a dig? Wine ant?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Both of you are bad at enunciating. It's wine ant or aunt, as in like the old lady.
Okay, but why?
I almost said it like you said. I almost went ant, and then I went, that's not even my accent. Why am I copying your accent? So like, that's probably why I pronounced it weird.
Claudia, that's why. No ifs, ands, or buts.
But what does the wine ant mean? That if you're the ant that brings over wine, that's somehow not cool? Because like the people bringing booze is cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, that sounds cool. I'm gonna steal that. I like that. The idea of like this aunt who comes by and drinks a bit of wine and stuff. That sounds fun. I want an auntie like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I need an aunt like that. I need more people to bring over booze. In fact, because I have none. It's all gone. And
it's all gone.
And
there's a
Michael did bring over a little bit.
Half
so
a beer right there.
But if I had a wine aunt right now, I would.
We'll restock your coffers soon enough, Brian. Don't you worry.
So, Claudia, we met on Twitter randomly. I think I commented on one of your posts, and we did a big back and forth.
Yeah. That was it.
Talk about, you are the rambling feminist, and you were talking about
ranting feminist.
Ranting
previously.
By the way, and rambling. No, you were saying that people were confused that you were an actual feminist, and you're just being.
Oh no, I am a feminist. Just they thought that I was like, no. They thought that I was like what my name and picture were like, but it was a joke. Like I was kind of just like leaning into some of the stereotypes for a joke in the hopes that I could like reach across the aisle and get people to hear me out, and like that they wouldn't just like write me off because they'd be like, hey, look, she's got a sense of humor about herself, you know, it's funny, it's a joke, like the blue hair and all that. Like but yeah, no one got the joke, so then I had to kind of rebrand a bit because I realized nobody got the joke. And
even some people
on my side of it, yeah, because the people on my side of politics thought that I was a satire channel taking a dig at feminists, so they weren't watching my videos for ages. And the people on the other side just went, haha, fat blue-haired feminist. And I'm like, well, no, I wanted you to hear me out. I was having a joke about myself.
This just sounds like a disastrous marketing campaign. You've alienated any and all audiences. No one knows what the hell you stand for. So here's your opportunity to announce what it is you do, what you like. What do you like about feminism? What do you not like about it? And then we can talk about male privilege.
Wow. What do I like about feminism and stuff? Well, it's not really a thing about like or dislike. It's just more that I've read a lot about it. I've had a few books I've read through about some of the theory, and also you can learn a surprising amount about it from blogs and stuff, as long as they're like accurately sourced depending on what it's talking about. Anyway, so I guess it's like I see a necessity for it still. I know some people would disagree, but maybe we're getting into contentious areas there. But what else? What do I dislike? I dislike that I don't like a lot of the stuff that gets popular where it's just like about manspreading and stuff like that, when I think there's really important issues that we could be talking about, and we're not talking about that because we're busy talking about this bullshit on BuzzFeed that, like, BuzzFeed can be good, but like there's a lot of fluff on there, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff that isn't published on a big scale because these people are have corporate sponsors who they don't want to upset. So if they start talking about more maternity leave or paternity leave or things like that, that's something that could financially impact the corporate sponsors. So they don't want them making that argument. So that's where I feel like financial incentive and the feminism being adopted by corporations and by these places that are beholden to corporations, it's been kind of a nightmare, because you can't really talk about anything that's real and financially impacts people, because otherwise that would mean corporations have to pay more money, and obviously they don't want to do that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So what you're saying is like things like mansplaining, manspreading, are fluff that really distract against what you're saying, the real arguments and where feminism ought to be focused, which it sounds like it's the workplace. And
let Brian
maternity rights. I mean, we're doing what we do, right? And cognitive therapy, we're repeating back, you know, what you're saying, honey.
I really want Brian to mansplain the views that you stand for.
No, like
no, it's fine. Continue.
But no, so would you really feel like that it's in the workplace, it's things like maternity leave, and you know, other like the fact that a woman may be part-time, that limits her career. Like, so what would you focus on, and where do you think like feminism needs to be targeted? Or where are the gaps? What needs to be targeted, rather?
I guess in the context of where I live in my country, in the 90s, there was this politician who had a very strong focus on the woman being at home looking after the children. That was John Howard. The Howard government in the 90s made a lot of changes to cut funds to childcare and make it harder to get childcare, because he had incredibly traditionalist Christian ideas. Even his own party didn't agree with a lot of it. So I'm not trying to say, that, you know, it's all bad right-wingers, boogeyman. But yeah, somebody's saying the 90s are over in the chat, which I'm like, I'm about to get to that. When the left-wing party got back in, they didn't actually reinstate a lot of the changes, and a lot of things were weakened when they were brought back. It's incredibly expensive to get childcare here, and compared to other OECD nations, Australian women have a much lower work participation rate than other nations that are similar. And I think that's something we need to be talking about and addressing, but I don't really see many people addressing that. And it kind of frustrates me to see nobody addressing that. And for example, I think it's over 30, or I might be getting the numbers wrong here, so bear with me. But yeah, it's women over 30. I think most of them are working part-time. It's like 60%. Oh, wait. No. What's the number? Anyway, forget it. Basically, there's a lot more women not working at all compared to other nations. I can't remember the numbers, so I need to just not.
Is it entirely could it be postulated that that's based on choice? I mean, there's plenty of people who make this argument. Your various Jordan Petersons of the world, who say, you know, listen, because women are more, you know, relationship conscious, and because they value what's it called, work-life balance more, they tend to prefer either part-time work or staying at home or whatever it is. It's not like they're forced into it. It's just that's the reality of the situation.
So what I would ask is, why do Australian women like staying at home with the kids more than American women or French women? Is there something unique to Australian women where we can see a direct correlation between policy changes that harm the ability to put your kids in childcare and, you know, women's lower participation in the workforce? Given that there's a direct correlation there, and we can see that Australian women are underemployed compared to other OECD nations, is there something unique to Australian women that just makes us want to stay home with the kids more?
So that's a valuable question, but I would counter with the fact that childcare is ridiculously expensive here. Now, I don't know how it compares to childcare in Australia. I would say there's also a possibility that you guys have insane minimum wage laws, and so, in my opinion, and so then it becomes expensive to do anything in Australia, period, whether it's order a beer or care for a child. And so by virtue of that, you have expensive childcare. But regardless, it's expensive to take care of children here too. So I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing.
That's what I'm thinking. It's cultural. Like why are 99% of people in Saudi Arabia Muslim? I mean, are they choosing this, or this is the way they were raised? And so I'm sure that the culture, and there probably is lingering effects from a conservative government in the 90s, and probably, you know, beyond that are still there. Sure.
Yeah, I guess so. I just personally, I don't really see why we can't try to make it easier for women who do want to work, like why we can't put more funding into childcare and make it easier to get childcare, on the chance that maybe this is caused by the fact that women want to work but can't. I don't know why we should just go, oh well, I guess women just like raising kids more, because looking at a set of statistics like that and going and concluding, well, women just like staying at home, that seems kind of like looking at a flood situation or whatever and being like, gee, these people really like swimming. It's just kind of missing the point. Like, it just yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with that conclusion. I know a lot of people like say that, but I don't think everyone chooses something just because they want to in our society, and it's a bit naive to think that people just choose what they want to do all the time.
I'm with her in this much. Like if whatever, let's say that, you know, 30% are working part-time, but 60% of Australian women want full-time jobs and are complaining that they can't get them. If Australian women are saying, you know, if there's a big chunk of them that are saying, hey, this is what we want, why aren't there avenues, then I'm absolutely with her. The question is, how many, you know, what's the proportion?
Also,
I just don't know.
No one is, this gets into compulsion. Every government program gets into compulsion. If you want children, you and, you know, Bob Smith or whatever some typical Australian name is, you get to figure out, do you want kids? Okay, well, let's say the answer is yes. Now your workflow diagram veers, right? Who wants to stay at home? Do both of you want to stay at home? Well, that's not possible. One of you needs to stay at home, maybe. Okay, who is it going to be? Who has the job that needs to be essentially, you know, sacrificed, and then someone stays home? Maybe both of you take turns. Maybe it's part-time. Maybe you want to pay for childcare. But if I don't want kids, I shouldn't have to pay for your decisions to have kids. That's complete compulsion. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but like,
You know what I
what
mean?
if I don't use the roads? Should I have to pay for you to use the roads because my tax money pays for the roads?
What-
And it's part of living in a society that your tax dollars pay for some things you don't want them to. I don't agree with what the military does, but my tax dollars pay for them because I live in a society where the government chose to do that. You live as a part of a society in a unit. I don't like this very self-centered attitude of a lot of these arguments. No offense, but like, it's like, oh well, why should my tax dollars pay for your decisions? Okay, but that happens all the time with a lot of things anyway. Like public schooling, we're funding that. I don't want to have children. Why should I have to pay for you to send your children to school? Why
Well,
can't you send them to private
So
schools?
I'll answer that one. That one's easy to dispel. Is if children get sent to school, they have something to do during the day, and ostensibly they get educated enough where they don't commit crimes in the future. So by someone who doesn't want to have kids, for example, by them subsidizing a public school via tax dollars, you're effectively contributing to the fact that someone's not going to mug you later on. It's like,
okay, and I could make the
insurance
same
policy.
argument about childcare, where if you're having licensed people who are qualified to look after children, that means they're not getting some kid down the road to babysit their child who's going to leave them on a couch and then go to work, or, you know, fucking do something horrible to the child. They're actually going to have professionals who are qualified to look after their children instead of leaving it with some kid who doesn't know what they're doing. And so you're going to have less children growing up a bit fucked up because some horrible babysitter neglected them. You're going to have qualified people looking after them.
Yeah, but this is an externality. You're bringing in a unqualified third party as if this is like the solution to this market problem.
But that's what they do. That's what
Maybe.
single mums do all the time. You
But it's hard to say
hear
you-
about this.
But
They get babysitters who aren't qualified to look after their children because they can't afford proper avenues.
But it's I don't know if like a babysitter is necessarily, like, it's hard to make a judgment on, you know, the upstanding high school kid. They could be very good, you know, and that daycare center could be really bad. So to me, that's hard to do. But your point's definitely well taken about the taxes. I tend to agree with you. It's hard because, you know, unless we're going to have a use tax literally on everything. But I guess the point is, if we want companies to change and say, give better maternity leave, and many of the professional women that I talk to are saying maternity leave is shit, right? And what they're given, the pay, that this has been a complaint in a number of industries that I hang around. And I generally believe these women because, like, I trust them, I like them. They're not just bitching. There's legitimate gripe there. The question is, how much do you increase that? Like, how much more do we do? And like, how much encouragement do we want women in the workplace? To me, it's up to the choice. So if there's X percentage of women, then we should increase it by X percentage. But I don't think we should just jack it to like 50-50. If, you know, if there isn't 50% of women say we want to be full-time in the workforce. I mean, are you with me there?
It's not jacking anything up. It's having a conversation with someone before you have that kid, right? So before you get married or whatever it is, you're like, hey.
Ideally, that's true, but it's not always. It doesn't always work like that. Like,
but then you're fucked. What I mean is, you should do planning ahead of time.
Some of the activist feminists are trying to socially engineer the society, right? They're saying, you know, we need 50-50% participation in the workforce. And I'm like, why? I mean, if only 25% of women wanted to be, then I want what those women want. So I'm just more I'm not a social engineer, but yet I want to react with the culture. I mean, where are you?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it has to be 50-50 parity. That's not an argument I made. I'm just saying that when like 40% of women aren't employed, like over a certain age, that's kind of something I think we should all be concerned about, whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning. And we should look at some of the things that we could change legislation-wise and go, hang on, these changes were made to make it harder to get childcare, like in my country, and, you know, there's unnecessary roadblocks here. What if we got rid of those roadblocks? And hey, some percentage of women still won't work because they prefer staying at home, but you know, I think she should have a choice. That's all I'm saying. And especially when it comes to single mothers, they're the ones hurt most by not having any avenues available to them. And, you know, you can say, oh, well, that's their bad decision. They made it. It's like, okay, but what does she do once the child's there? Like, because you can't just, I don't know. I think it's like all well and good to say to her, well, you made a bad choice. It's like, yeah, no shit. She's got a kid she's got to look after. But I don't think it's fair to just say, well, you've got to suffer through that and not consider the child who had no say in this.
Well, so I have a question, because aren't you making an assumption, two assumptions really? One is that when the question of who has to stay home and take care of the kid, it's a foregone conclusion based on your argument that it's going to be the woman, which I don't understand why we're assuming that, because that should be a conversation, right? So maybe, you know,
ideally, sure, but I mean, it doesn't seem to be sometimes. Like, I don't know, like,
seem to be thing doesn't really work, because again, there's no law.
The courts are giving custody often to the women, right?
Stop stealing my second point.
There you go.
But that's the second. So the first point is there's no law that says the woman has to stay home when they can't afford childcare, right? Because you could have the dude stay home. That's 100% legal.
Yeah.
But the second thing is the court, because you talked about single mothers. So courts giving the mother, the mom wants custody, right? She's requested it in this case. It's not like she just got stuck with the kid, like, fuck, what am I going to do? No, she fought in court to get the kid. And now you're saying, oh, well, now I'm fucked because of the... Okay, well, if you couldn't afford childcare at that point, but the dude could, okay, well, then I guess the custody should go to the guy.
Or they could split. I mean, it almost sounds like in order to get to where you were going, we might there's a few MRA points that may actually help you. That's what I mean. Mainly, and the big MRA one is custody of kids. There's a lot there, you know, and I'm not really in MRA, so I'm not going to be able to ascribe the arguments that well, but there's others that say that the custody battles, there are many men that are completely getting kicked out of custody. And that there is this kind of overall ethos that yes, that the kids belong with the women, and where is that coming from? That
I mean, I'd say that's the sexist ideas that women are better, you know, child rearers, and that's not always true. And
Right.
but that's kind of from sexism against women. It's just kind of I feel like gender stereotypes hurt everyone. It's not that sexism against women only hurts women, because at the end of the day, if you're saying that women belong at the home taking care of the children, you're saying that women are better with children than men are. So it actually becomes sexist against men as well. Like sexism against women becomes sexism against men, but the MRAs can't understand this, and they think that I'm saying that this is all men's fault. So I don't understand that. Like, patriarchy doesn't mean it's men's fault. So, but they think that is what it means. So
well, I think some MRAs would agree with you, right? Not
yeah, maybe
not
so,
all
I don't
MRAs.
know. I mean, maybe there's like 3 out there.
No,
I don't know.
it goes to the point of social engineering. Is no one's saying that you know, the woman has to stay at home. You know, maybe it was it was from a bygone era that these are ideas that have since been debunked, and we're in the 21st century, and you can do whatever the hell you want. I mean, women are graduating college at a higher rate than men are.
Yeah.
So,
and young, like the childless women, young women are out earning men.
I mean, you
at least in America.
If you listen, if we were married, why am I using you as an example? If my wife and I wanted to have a kid, and she had a higher degree than I did, and one of us needed to stay home to take care of the kid, and somehow we agreed that she should stay home, or sorry, I made her stay home, that would be absolutely asinine. Like,
can I just hold up a second here? I'm not saying that if the woman chooses to stay home, she's being forced against her will all the time. That's not my point. I don't know. It felt a little bit like you were suggesting that.
No. I'm not making.
I think she's got a good point on if you want to be full-time career woman, right? And then you decide that you do want to have a kid. This is tough because you can't always just take off 4 months, especially if you're like at a VP level, and then expect to just get your job.
This is
very, very hard.
Let's demarcate that, because that is what's it called? Maternity leave, which 100% I think there's an argument there. You can't fuck with biology. I can't have the baby. You need paid maternity leave. That's not a feminist point. That's, if anyone in the chat tries to argue this, you're a goddamn moron.
But you could argue about the levels.
Sure, you can argue about the levels, but in terms of paid what's it called? Paid childcare, and I think someone made this point, is you're effectively asking the government to pay for women to go to work, which is, you know, that your mind explodes at that point, because no one's paying me to go to work.
They're saying, but the argument is like, because women bear the kids, like we ought to do it. I mean, we are saying that businesses have to cater to disabled, right? You have to put in the ramp. You've got to make handicapped parking. So that's an extra cost. Couldn't you say the same thing for women? I guess that to take her point.
What extra? Sorry,
like for the Disabilities Act, right? At times that you have a deaf employee or you have deaf customers, you have to make transcription available to them. If you have almost every place has wheelchair ramps that are accessible.
Yeah. Make the leap to.
But what I'm saying is the government can require that. Like, and most people would say, Americans with disabilities, this is fine. That yes, to order a business, you have to have a ramp. So couldn't you say, in order to have a business, you do have to make it as easy for women to compete in men, especially mothers? Because a childless woman, I think, has
childcare or maternity.
I'm talking
leave?
about same. Like,
no. You can't. They're two.
Well, fine, but you could
things.
say that the government should fund this, because
or the government should fund
maternity
leave, not childcare,
or the government should fund a certain amount of disability programs. It's the same thing, right? You're trying to like disabled people have the same opportunities as everyone else. Couldn't you do it? I mean,
I think there's probably some businesses where that's more possible than others. I know there are some businesses currently that have childcare on their facilities. I think Google does. I don't remember. I think for Google, they had a childcare facility on site, but I guess I think mandating it, you'd run into problems of small businesses. I think it would be harder for them to compete. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you could mandate it, but I think there's some things which would be nice. But yeah, I don't know if it would be possible for a smaller business or for, say, a restaurant or something like that. But yeah, I think it's more that I think we should find ways to make it more accessible and affordable. But yeah, that's about it.
But couldn't we give women, and maybe this is already available, like certain tax credits in order to compete in the same way? So it's not up to the company, because you're right, the companies may react by not hiring as many women, right? And it could have the opposite effect. But if you could have tax credits for that childcare, especially for, again, it's not single women that I think have the problem, but mothers. Maybe.
Why again, this is illogical. Why are you arguing that somehow innately the woman has to do the childcare? I could just as easily stay home. Do I get the tax credit?
We're talking about daycare. We're talking about daycare.
Daycare. Do I get a credit?
Well, if you're paying for daycare, then sure, you should. There
you go.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with a feminist argument. It's just a societal argument.
I mean, it kind of is a feminist argument, because you're saying that the idea of it is so that women can participate in the workforce. But again, it could help men as well, because, like, again, I think at the moment we're at now, we've solved a lot of the overt issues when it comes to gendered law. I know there's probably a few little ones that haven't been addressed yet. I don't know. I don't want to say that too definitively, but I'm pretty sure most of the overtly sexist stuff in law has been fixed. But there's little things that people don't really think about that still need to be ironed out. And so I think there's still a few things we can be doing. But yeah, I think women's participation in the workforce could still use some work. And I'm not saying that no woman can ever choose to stay at home if that's what makes them happy. And I'm not saying that men can't stay at home if they want to, because those things are both possible. And, you know, that's great for them if that makes them happy. But that's
so it sounds like what you're saying, not from a social engineering standpoint, but to removing barriers.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all for removing barriers. Now, what about when Google talks about But I think that's what she's saying. And anyways, is that terrible?
He's
Jeremiah Gillette commercialing now?
Mansplaining again.
So
he's mansplaining again.
No, I get it. I actually agree.
We need more women in STEM. Like, do we? Like, I don't. Like, to me, this is an obvious social engineering. We need to encourage more women to get into STEM. Why? Like, and why? Like, if they want to get into STEM, great. And they are going in, like, medicine. Certain parts of medicine are absolutely dominated by women, and they're doing great. But like, if women aren't picking neurosurgery, but they are picking like psychology, they're picking pediatrics, they're dominating gynecology, and like in a lot of other places, and even primary care. Like, why do we have to push that? To me, that sounds like social engineering. Does that fall under feminism, or where?
I think on that? It's that people are trying to sort of address some of the gender stereotypes that cause people to choose things, and that's where it gets on a much deeper psychological level. And I think that's a harder argument to have, because at that point, like, it becomes contentious, because I think when we think of certain types of scientists, like if we think of a physicist, what comes to our mind immediately, just if you close your eyes and think of physicist, you'll probably imagine a man. And to some people that can be an issue. And there are things in society that tell women they aren't quite as good at things like maths or some types of sciences. And it's not an overt, like, it's not like somebody standing on her, like, on her and saying, no, you can't do that, you're too stupid. And so that's why it's harder to talk about, I guess, because, you know, the things you're pointing to are kind of deeper than that. And so it's harder, like, to have that discussion, I think, because if you haven't seen it or the way this impacts people, it's going to be harder to explain it. But I know stereotype threat has been something that's been studied where, you know, it's demonstrated that women have less confidence when it comes to things like maths and that. But if they do things to sort of mitigate that can actually help women's performance at things like maths tests. Well, I should say, like, female students in high schools and stuff. So not women as such, because they're young women, but yeah.
I'm all for pushing, you know, if a group of women learn better this way, or yeah, I'm all for pushing higher scores in math skills. It's like, but they get to decide what they want to do with it. I don't think we should like really be pushing, oh, well, I'm sorry, you know, psychology wasn't a good field for you. You need to be in a surgical residency.
I mean, I don't think anyone's doing that though. Like, if this was being mandated and forced on a like systemic level, if the government was forcing women to choose physics who didn't want to choose physics, then I'd absolutely be horrified by that. So
I know
I think
cultural pressure. It's the same thing where, like in the Catholic Church, they were pressuring people to go into the seminary and be a priest. And that same false pressure there, I feel like, is being put on women to do all this other stuff, which they may or may not want to do.
This sounds like a talking point, though. Like, and Claudia, you can weigh in here. I mean, you mentioned, oh, you're not good at something. You're not good at math, or as being said to a woman. I've never heard that.
I was saying that's not being overtly said. That was my example of what's not happening, not what is happening. Like, I'm not saying that somebody's standing behind her and saying those things. So no, that was the opposite of what I said. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's because I was like, wait, I've never, and I've made this mistake before, because actually Brian and I are both kind of peripherally related to the medical industry, and so I'll be referring to a doctor. And sure, you know, mentally, if I slip up, I'll say he, just because that's sure. I mean, at some point that's ingrained, but we have a fuck ton of female doctors. And more often than not, I'll catch myself after and I'll say he or she or whatever it is. And rarely, if I don't catch it, I'll get corrected. But that doesn't mean that somehow on some level, I think that women are less qualified to be doctors, or they're dumber, or anything like that.
No. I don't think it's like that you think they're dumber. It's just that sort of stereotype doesn't like affect how women see themselves. And it's not that you're like a sexist, because I genuinely don't think you're a chauvinist or something like that.
Thank you, Claudia. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't think you're a member of the KKK.
Just the stereotype hurt. I mean, the majority, 99% or so, at least 95% of garbage men are in fact men, right? 95% of blasters, you know, people that work on high power lines, loggers, fishers. Like, is this a weird thing that we say that this is a stereotype? I
mean, I guess it's not necessarily a stereotype. It's like there are some things that are generally true, but I think it's also like, I think it's about just kind of removing barriers on a cultural level. But again, this gets more tricky because, you know, people live in such different social circles as well, that there are people who have almost like legitimately had parents who will tell them, oh no, you're a woman, you won't be good at any of that, you know, you can't go to uni, you shouldn't even finish high school, that kind of thing. Because I've known women who had that sort of experience, but I lived in a totally different thing where my parents didn't treat me any differently to if I was a guy. And like, they're not ultra feminist. People sort of assume that that my parents are like ultra progressive, ultra feminist, but no, they're just sort of average parents.
Media has a lot to do with this. Like, if you were growing up in the 60s and every TV show that you saw had the doctor was a man and the nurse was a woman, I can see how if you're growing up in the 70s as a kid, you're like, fuck, that's what I have to look forward to. But you have so much, I can't name a single medical show. Grey's Anatomy, that's the one. With the whatever. So Grey's Anatomy,
Grey's a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever. If you're growing up in the 2000s, you think for a second that you have some sort of a built-in stereotype that you can't be a doctor? I flat out reject that argument that because I grew up in the 90s and for whatever reason I have, you know, an ingrained stereotype that somehow a kid in the 2000s now isn't going to become a doctor because somehow I slipped
or even
up
a
with
soldier.
I don't think
Walking Dead, the female characters are ass kickers just as much as the male characters.
Yeah. I think that also comes into another thing I've read about the girl power media of the 90s and stuff, where it went from being kind of male dominated. Apparently, though, most main characters in movies are still male, but I don't really know much about that side of it because I'm not really a big movie buff myself. But when you think about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all these other things, the thing is, though, it sort of was interesting to see the shift, because I think what it is companies realize that rather than fight feminism or make it look like this dumb thing, they could just adopt it and, you know, make money off of it. And they realize that, hey, there's a whole market here we could be making money off, young women. And so it's kind of, I don't really believe that companies are doing this out of altruistic things, because the thing is, feminism economically is a really cool thing for companies, because yeah, like if more women are working and in the workforce, it's good for them
when it's done right. Like Buffy is awesome. So is
but that's not
so is Xena.
That's a bad example. These
but,
are not.
There's been a lot of flops too, like the Ghostbusters.
That's not feminism, though. I don't think that someone filmed Xena Warrior Princess because they wanted to jump on the feminist bandwagon. It was just,
well, I mean, it's not that they set out to do it. It's that our culture has shifted and our culture influences us. Like when you are surrounded by something, like if you're surrounded by this sort of girl power media and all that, like the Spice Girls, they, you know, were all about girl power, and they'd say that a lot. I remember I grew up with all this. So I feel like if you're surrounded by
comics, but like comics have been around for a while. Wonder Woman has got her boot in the face of all these like male criminals and stuff. I mean she's practically a dominatrix. So you know, that there's girl power in the 40s.
So this thing just came out. Actually, I just saw it from George Takei, who I follow on Facebook. Something about how female leads or female-centric movies are now grossing more money than male-centric. And yeah, this is great. And I responded to that, and I was like, listen, that's an absolutist argument. You can't make that. I get that you want to be an ally, a fucking, female empowerment. Sure. Look at
You're talking to George, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
George, who's, you know, whatever.
Sulu.
Giant, you know, he's far as left as Vladimir Lenin.
I think that's a little exaggeration.
No,
I don't think he's quite a Leninist.
I mean,
it's hyperbole to the left.
Yeah, I know. I just laugh because it's funny. Because if I don't call that out, my commie followers will hate me for it.
He's not left enough.
That's right.
George Takei is not one of us.
I've never seen him with an Antifa flag.
Anyway, so I made a comment about that, and I was like, listen, that's great, but then you'll have something like Ghostbusters that fucking flopped. Now, they made a concerted push to highlight that movie as being, we had a male-dominated movie, and now we're going to have
woke.
It was egged as woke. It was like
woke.
Dripping in woke.
It's woke after you're woke.
And it fucking died. It was a horrible movie versus Wonder Woman, which has a long history. That was one of the 5 worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I have a whole thing.
You didn't like Wonder Woman?
I hated that movie. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it was a female lead. It was just the plot line was so full of holes. You could drive a goddamn semi-truck through it. The first 15 minutes on that island with the Amazons was incredible. It was a very cool storyline. And then...
That's where he wants to live.
Yeah. You were going to go there with that comment. No. Point is, you had, Wonder Woman had a rich history from whenever the hell she was introduced in the 20th century. And then they made a movie and everyone went to watch it. And they didn't go to watch it because they were like, oh, yeah, I want to empower women. Much the same way that people didn't go to see Black Panther because they felt like they needed to empower Black people. It's just a Marvel movie or a DC movie in this case.
Yeah, I never thought it was weird that Storm had special powers, or Jane Grey. I never thought that was feminist, that she was the most powerful mutant.
But
it just was.
But the woke movement took these movies and they were like, you see, you can make a movie about a woman, and I'm like, you don't need to throw that in my face. I'm going to see it regardless.
But in fact, I don't think they're throwing it in your face. I think they're just more talking to the Hollywood types,
like Black
Panther. Like find me somebody that will the movie critic that said I hated Black Panther. You won't, because they can't say it.
No,
you
100%.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the case for a lot of things. Like, I watch a lot of Jim Sterling, and he gets shit all the time for coming out and saying unpopular opinions about not liking a specific kind of game or whatever. And, you know, gamers, we're a weird bunch. Like, when you look at some of the shit that happens, people get death threats over.
Claudia, where do you fall on liking or not liking Red Dead Redemption?
I kind of saw some of it played, and I think there was Red Dead. We're talking about the second one, right? The recent one. Yeah. I didn't like the very graphic skinning of animals and shit like that. I was like, ugh, I don't want to look at that. Why would I play this game where you get this very like in-depth thing of skinning an animal and yuck? It just looks gross. I don't want to look at that.
So what kind of games do you like then? As your gamer, you have to give your pedigree a little bit. Like what kind of games do you go for?
Well, I kind of love and hate Overwatch. I love it and I hate it at the same time because I keep going back for more, but I hate it because nobody ever works as a team and it's a nightmare. I really like Ring of Elysium. I've been playing recently with some friends who got me into it. It's basically like PUBG, but it's made by a Chinese group, so I just kind of call it Chinese PUBG because. You know,
can I just jump to first of all, hi Shu. Second of all, get this shit out of here that Wonder Woman is the best DC movie. This is bull. First, have you seen Aquaman? Aquaman is both the greatest movie ever made and the worst movie ever made.
Aquaman's a weird superhero.
Now, granted, I was high as fuck when I watched it.
Yeah,
but it was one of the best. I started off and I was like, I can't believe I'm sitting here and I'm watching this. And then after a while, I was like, I can't believe I'm sitting here in this is a singular moment in history where I'm watching the greatest. They know what kind of shit show this is, and there's still someone approved it.
All right, now you're gonna have to give Shu equal time or something. Do you want to take that, Claudia?
No. Maybe she's never even.
I don't really watch these films. Sorry.
So what about this? We're talking about gaming, right? And we're talking about feminism in gaming. Now, what have you heard about like the Battlefield 5 controversy? And so we're gonna put women soldiers in the game now and in mass. So like it's okay if there were Russian women, there were Russian artillery crews. There was actually a decent amount of women like pushed into the Red Army. But like in the American Army, people are saying, look, this wrecks my immersion. The whole point of I'm playing is I really want to feel like I'm in there. Yeah. So should you have, again, when I'm shooting at a black female Nazi, that's weird, right? I should be shooting at a white German male, right? Again, it's pixel.
Yeah. What do you think of I guess it depends how far they've gone with it. I don't really like the Battlefield games much, but I mean, I don't really like get the realism argument from like a video game when it's like, do you really play it to reenact war? Like, why don't you go to a war reenactment or some bullshit? Like, because games aren't realistic and that's what makes them fun. Like, if you got shot in real life, you'd be like curling behind a
right, but the racing games aren't real either because you crash, but still you're gonna have a car with 4 wheels, not 7. So there is a point of making it as realistic as possible for
Twisted Metal.
Okay, like you know what I mean. You
I don't know, just like female, male. I don't really care what the characters are. I'm gonna enjoy it and have fun. So I don't really know why it would stop you having fun shooting at a black female Nazi. Like if you're shooting at black female Nazis and black Nazis and white Nazis, fuck it. It's a game. It's fun.
I think it's a suspension of disbelief. Like it's. But although then my argument,
because like when they're speaking and yelling in German, that gives it more of a realistic phase, right? Like that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, but if they're yelling in like American slang, circa 2011,
black female Nazis in the game, like because I didn't think they were. Like, were there?
Well, in the multiplayer, yeah. So it will populate your randomly by race and by team, so you could have a black female Nazi.
Oh,
or a black female.
Well, I mean, that's just the multiplayer. Wasn't multiplayer always like that for things like COD? Like, because I remember, I think I tried to play it once. I'm not really a COD fan, but like I think I played it once.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Well, so no, for the modern games, if like if this is like in the future, yeah, I totally get it because it's a futuristic world. But when you're trying to recreate, I do get the sentiments of people that are pissed about it. And I think you're allowed to be pissed about that without being called a sexist.
I think it's just kind of petty, personally. Like, if you're going to pick that one thing out of everything to get upset about, it just seems kind of weird to me. Like, you're really that bothered? Like, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just not on the same wavelength as these people, but
would you call that,
I mean,
person a sexist, or would you call him like you did petty?
I'd probably say it's a little bit sexist, but it's mostly petty, I'd call it. Like, I'd lean more towards calling it petty and silly, because,
Okay.
I mean, you're talking about a game where, like, you can jump from one fucking helicopter to another and smash that helicopter into someone or whatever, and, like,
Yeah.
all this ridiculous shit, and then you're like, oh, a woman?
Right.
Way to ruin my immersion. Like,
well,
dude, you just fucking Rambo'd through the place, and now you're worried about a black female Nazi. Like, you're Rambo. Like, and honestly, I reckon that would be fun, having black female Nazis. I don't know. That sounds hilarious and fun to me. Like,
a black
why
female
not?
Nazi walked into a bar and.
All right, so Claudia, I got a question. What do you say? Because I agree to an extent. You can say that something like that's petty, right?
I think we have a Venn diagram overlap here. Okay.
What do you say to the person that says, "Listen, this is a small infraction. This is a small thing that happened," right? Very similar to just a quick segue. There's a story that came out today or yesterday about this cafe in Arizona that had a picture on the wall that had a bunch of miners, like people in a mine, not
M-I-N-E-R.
Yeah.
That had soot on their face, and someone was triggered because they perceived it as blackface. So it's not that they mistook it for blackface. They fully realized
this is bullshit.
That's kind of dumb.
They fully realized that it was minors, but they could not help the fact that they felt.
Are you sure that's not satire? I feel like that's going to be satire.
Because the opinion piece was
the Babylon Bee.
The opinion piece was written by the asshole who was triggered by it, and then they published it in whatever the fuck newspaper. I literally just posted this like an hour ago.
Okay, I'll just look it up, because I have an awful feeling that this is going to be satire. My satire alarm's going off.
Well, no,
maybe.
It just seems a little bit too far-fetched, but if it's real, absolutely, that's
remember
fucking
the definition
stupid.
of woman? There were in Britain, like noun woman, and then there was a whole bunch of people saying that was transphobic. And now a lot of the TERFs are running around putting those shirts on statues. Like,
this is
to me, this is
an example where you've run away with something no one understands. That doesn't matter, Brian. Point being, it's a small thing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's small. just like the feeding suffragette, just like the black female, whatever it is. And the argument that's made by someone like me who posted about this fucking idiot in Arizona. Now, I have friends that are like, why are you sharing this bullshit? This represents the fringe of the fringe. You don't need to worry about it. Is that if you don't see that as outrage, if you don't spread the fact that this is a problem and we should criticize the moron who posted about the miners, who wrote about the miners, then you're slowly sliding so that the Overton window moves to such a position where you can be triggered by anything.
Yeah, like the shoe would say that the stuff on Tumblr like 4 years ago is like now mainstream feminism.
I mean, I don't know if you could take it that far. Like, I feel like there's idiots in every group, and it's just feminists get a hard time. But when you think about it, there are conservatives who do really fucking dumb shit that goes pretty mainstream. Like, Tucker Carlson did that section on the fucking gingerbread person thing, and like, oh no, gender is under attack.
Gingerbread man versus gingerbread person.
Oh, yeah, because somebody just like, it was just some fucking cafe in I think it was Scotland, but she just made gingerbread people instead of gingerbread men and called them that, and then all these conservatives got triggered about it. So I feel like that's on both sides. Like, I feel like there's pointless outrage on all sides of things, and it's just kind of dumb on all sides. And the war on Christmas, somebody brought that up, like, oh no, they said happy holidays and not Merry Christmas. Fucking, I'm under attack. Like, come on, people.
No, I get it. I think there is ridiculous outrage, but others, like, white privilege. I mean, this was used like, a little bit in the Covington kids, but you know, when you say white privilege, like it partially says, well, yeah, you haven't even earned what you've done. So it takes a smack at, well, you know, maybe this guy's been busting his ass. And there are poor white people that are living in a trailer that have, you know, a deadbeat dad and alcoholic mom. There is no white privilege there to speak of. And upper middle class black kid, you know, is way, way better off than that white kid in the trailer. So to me, the calling it white privilege is just, it's stupid. And it's a little bit reminiscent of Jewish privilege in Germany, right? This is one of the reasons why we have to go after Jews. It's not a good road to go down. I mean, this can lead to the tribal polarism. You know, like, what do you think about that?
Well,
Like,
I to address some of the concerns there, because I feel like I don't want you to just go too far, too much with that. Otherwise, I won't be able to address all of it. I'll just stop you there quickly. So the whole thing with it, I think, when it's used in a proper sense and an academic sense, it's mostly talking about broad demographics, where as a demographic, white people tend to be better off than black people, and that's just a general trend we see. But of course, you're going to have white people who grew up in shit homes and have a really shitty life, and of course, you're going to have black people who do quite well. So, you know, it's not that every single case you're going to have, like, and actually this is where intersectionality comes in, where it's not just about race or just about any one thing. It's that a lot of these traits compound together and affect your chances of doing well at life. And so you'd say that, you know, you might have a class oppression when it comes to growing up in a shit household with, you know, a deadbeat dad and, you know, a druggy mum or whatever else it might be, because, you know, you're in one of the lower class brackets. So that's where class comes into it. And class is probably one of the biggest indicators of success and what your life will be like. And I think we'd all agree to that class is probably one of the biggest things affected. But the thing is with race is that generally there's a trend with class and race, because black people financially have been fucked over a lot in the past, like with segregation, redlining, and that sort of thing. So that's why black people are considered a disadvantaged group when it comes to that. And honestly, I figure with this privilege versus oppression thing, it might actually be easier to get a lot of people to understand it if we just called it advantage and disadvantage, where I'd say personally, I think being white in a white majority country is an advantage. So, you know, I think it depends how you define what you mean.
That's right.
But no one would ever argue that if Brian's living in Japan, then he's going to be
if we
also
call it dominant culture privilege, right? Because now it could be a global thing, and it's not white, because you do not have white privilege in Japan. In fact, you're going to be discriminated against.
I mean, it depends, because you have a foreigner disadvantage, but the thing is, being white and foreign in Japan is better than being black and foreign in Japan, because, you know, the stereotypes about black people are kind of global, and the racism against black people is pretty global. In fact, I've seen some horrible things of, you know, Japanese guys harassing black women and stuff like that. And, you know, like, I think that the racism against black people in Asia is really bad. So,
and that
you know,
could be true.
You're insulated from that.
Yeah, but what are you going to do about
specifically when we say black disadvantage, though, it's specifically men, right? If black women and white women, but black women and white women, if you separate for class and socioeconomic class, are doing equally as well in the United States.
Black women do better.
They're
but you're separating, like, you're basically taking away the meat of the problem, which is the class issue. Like,
but if you stratify it, like, again, because more black people are poor, so you can't do it. But if you take and adjust for class and take any woman that from any black woman from socioeconomic class, whatever, compare it to a white woman of the same class, they're doing over the average, they're doing the same. Now, white men and black men, totally different. White men are winning across classes. And why?
Also,
you know, like, it's weird that it breaks out by gender, and you
No,
know, to
I
me,
don't-
like racism doesn't explain everything. And I think we keep saying it's racism. And I think it's a lot more complicated than that.
No,
But that's the whole idea of intersectionality, is that there's a lot of things affecting it. And there are things that intersectionality won't account for that can disadvantage you. Like, for example, if your parents divorce, you have a lower chance of success in life and you have more chance of problems when you have a single parent. So, you know, that's one thing intersectionality doesn't have in its theory. But I think it's more like it's about general broad trends. And, you know, I personally, I don't know if I like that, you know, it's been dubbed privilege to not experience certain types of racism, just because I feel like that's not going to get most people on board. Like, I don't care personally. You can call it a privilege to me and I don't really care. But I know a lot of people, they think of privilege and they think of like pearl necklaces and luxury furniture, and they think of just living with no problems at all. So I feel like that's where a lot of the divide comes from. But I feel like if I suggest changing it, that maybe people might get the wrong idea, and I don't know if I should really suggest that. But
I always said that social justice seriously needs to go to a sales course. Like they really, really, really do, because they're terrible salespeople.
Yeah, I want to come back to this railing against classism, because I think this is just a reality of life. It's, I don't have a good analogy, but you can say, oh, I don't like it, and that's fine. I guess it's your prerogative. But the fact is that I don't think you're going to want to have lunch with a homeless person. Claudia, I could be wrong. You could love homeless people. You could just fucking, they could be your favorite people. There's a class distinction there.
Dimitri just threw Mr. Wendell under the bus.
I don't know who that is. Once again,
From Arrested Development.
Once
Come
again,
on. Somebody got that from the 90s. Come on, in the desert, somebody that heard that fucking song.
No one got it. Okay, Brian, go back to your Star Trek references. Okay, my point is that there's these class distinctions make sense because you want to be around people who kind of share your life experiences and or smell like you. Okay. So, I mean, let's just be very, and Panera's actually a good example. So Panera Bread did this experiment where they had this pay whatever you want cafe in a couple of different areas, where you could come in and you could either pay nothing and get food, or you could pay more, whatever it is. They had suggested prices, and it failed. And not because people didn't want to give to charity, whatever it is. It's because you had people that literally felt uncomfortable eating next to a homeless person. I'm sure they don't hate homeless people, and in fact, they would love to give to a charity. But let's be very clear. The class divisions, no one makes them. They just essentially form. Or just like if I were eating with a billionaire, you know, and unless they were super down to earth and wanted to eat the same burger that I was eating, I would even feel a little uncomfortable, just like the homeless people in the Panera situation felt uncomfortable with their shopping cart eating next to middle class or whatever it is people. You wanna be surrounded by people where you kind of know what the rules
where
of the
everybody
road are.
knows your name.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I think that's a fair point. I just kind of want to address a couple of things. So for me, I'm not saying like, oh, we should all go out and eat with homeless people and, you know, just hang out with them and exchange numbers or whatever. Like that would be a bit weird. But basically my thing with the homeless thing is that a lot of these people have untreated mental illnesses in the US. Most of them, well, not most of them. There's a lot of them who are veterans, and you know, a lot of them I think have untreated mental illness issues that really need to be addressed. And in my country, the problem is you can't go on welfare without a fixed address, so they're kind of just stuck. And if they don't have a friend to take them in, they're screwed. And that's what I think is a problem, where I personally, I'd like to see some changes with how we handle the homelessness issue, especially in my country, because we can get welfare to people and stuff, but it doesn't really pay very much. But I think that you should be able to get welfare payments without having a fixed address, so that at least they can try to help themselves get out of it, because how are they going to find a job when they're homeless? and there's a lot of drug problems. I think we should be funding more rehabilitation or that kind of thing. I'd like to see more focus on rehabilitation. Drug issues, I think, need to be fixed more.
More mental health than drugs.
Yeah, it's mental health and drugs. I think that's mostly what would make people uncomfortable about homeless people. Like, at least in my experience, it's the mental health issues and drugs that would make it uncomfortable. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot more going on there than just class, because there's also mental health. And I think you'd agree to a lot of the things I suggested about fixing it, like that, you know, you shouldn't have to have a fixed address to get welfare. Because I think
I would leave that to the experts, right? Because you know that some people are so antisocial that they don't want an address, right? That you can't make a homeless person like, here's your house. Who's going to say he or she is going to go in there? And most homeless are men, right?
I don't know if that's the case. I completely disagree with both of you, because if
again, I'd leave it to the experts. I'm not.
If you have a policy that says, listen, I'm not going to have a house, I'm not going to have an apartment, but my permanent address is going to be a homeless shelter. Okay. That's what I'm going to put on a resume. That's what I'm going to put on the welfare thing, whatever it is. And you have to check into that homeless center once every, I don't care, make it up, right? Then you're at least making sure that that person is tethered to reality, tethered to society. And you have someone that's offering them mental health services, offering them something else. You've got the homeless shelter becomes almost like a checkpoint of sorts that allows.
But you can't use the homeless shelter as a welfare thing, or as you know, or on your resume. And also, would you want it on your resume that you're homeless?
But again, you have to somehow we either have to socialize the fact that that's okay, or be like, hey, listen, here's the reality. And also, if you put 2000, State Street, how does someone know that that's a homeless shelter? You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's just
I mean, if you end up with experience with that, though, like if you encounter this or whatever, if you Google it because you go, hang on, that sounds odd, like it's still, I don't know, I don't know, I'm not an employer, but I figure, like, when people come from a certain place, like I know even from employment agencies and stuff, like, and with the government, if you're on payments, I know that they won't speak to a lot of people at Centrelink. They won't, I think they tried to do things here with the welfare where they were looking for people's jobs for them. But then there were a lot of people who wouldn't deal with them because there's a lot of negative stereotyping about people on Centrelink and stuff, which is welfare payments here. So yeah, it's kind of a thing where you don't want to reveal something like that about yourself. Like, people with disabilities or mental illness won't really want to reveal that on a job interview a lot of the time, because people tend to discriminate. So yeah.
Well, I get, but like the stereotypes can go the same way. I honestly think that the cis white male is one of the biggest negative stereotypes, right? I mean, this is the Covington kids get convicted primarily because if that guy would have been Mexican, any other race, that shit would not have happened, right? It was because this is my biggest problem with intersectionality. Isn't so much that, like, I'm fine for, let's focus on the Native American veteran or the black woman that came from a poor family. Like, that is hell of a success story. But to say, we can discount his opinion because he's just a cis white male. He's an old white man.
Really feel like that's what's being said about most issues. Like, I mean, the thing is, there are a lot of white dudes who try to step in on issues they don't really know anything about, and they want to be taken seriously as if they're someone who's experienced it. And I kind of get when people tell that person to, stay out of it, because that person doesn't know what they're talking about and is demonstrating it through what they're saying.
Okay, but what about the guy, the CEO, the ex-CEO of Starbucks, that's saying, I might run as an independent candidate for the United States, right?
Let's go.
And the Democrat, the DNC head was saying, well, why are white billionaires getting into this? They absolutely tried to cut him down because he's an old white man.
This is not a good argument.
No,
Brian.
It's a great argument, because
politics.
He's saying white men get in. Like, why wouldn't a CEO of a company that size be qualified to run the United States as a president, or at least be the president he should be.
You have
but
a
yet
lot of
you are
good
knocking him
arguments.
down.
No,
This is a great. So the thing is,
I don't
it
think
happens all the time.
They are not knocking him down
Yes,
because he's a white male. They're knocking him down because he doesn't want to support the
Okay,
DNC.
I
That's the
listened
only
to the
reason.
quote. I listened to the quote. Okay, I will play it. Ben Shapiro talked about it today. They ran it like it's bad.
Another
The
straight white male.
intersectionality wing of the Democratic Party, I do not think does a lot of good, because that there's much hating against the people not on the intersectionality scale as they are about helping the people that are.
Yeah, I think that's more like about him being a billionaire, but I do think it's probably, like, because they're using white to sort of signal privilege there, and like, being out of touch with the common man is essentially what they're saying with that. But yeah, primarily I'd have an issue with him being a candidate more because he has no experience whatsoever in politics and he has no connections. So it sort of becomes like,
that would be a fine
no,
argument.
it wouldn't. Wait, so you want people who are
not, at least
established?
it's not a racist argument, right?
Somewhat established.
White male is a racist argument.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great argument to say, oh, well, he's a white straight male or whatever. Like, I wouldn't personally argue that. I think it's more because he comes out with these very, oh, I'm ultra centrist on everything. There's problems on both sides, guys. There's problems with Trump and there's problems with the Democrats.
Yeah,
but I'm
wait,
gonna
what's
be
wrong
good.
with
I want to vote for this guy.
Sort of
100%. I would vote for him too.
don't mean anything. Like, I don't know. It doesn't really mean anything to say both sides are bad, but I'll be good. Like, I promise, guys.
Well, no,
I mean,
but
it's not
he's specifically picking apart like the healthcare for all, like the Medicare for all argument, saying this is ridiculous. Like you have to actually implement a plan. We can't sit there and be this pie in the sky Ocasio-Cortez and just saying this is what we're going to do. And he even said, define the new Green Deal. Stop talking about this absurd pie in the sky stuff and let's get down to what this actually is supposed to be. That is commonsensical. Like, this is a practical, like, manager would do something like that. And like, to me, that's all good. Like, otherwise we're just going to talk about the new Green Deal as is this pie in the sky thing, and that's all it will ever be.
Well, I mean, I find it weird that you say pie in the sky for Medicare for all, because I mean, my country has healthcare for people. We're not dying because we can't afford our medical bills and that kind of thing, at least not generally.
And there's
so
no,
it's weird
there's
that
no
Americans
in Australia.
think you can't. Huh?
There's private insurance.
There is private insurance, but it's because people want the extras sometimes or don't want to wait on waiting lists. So
Kamala Harris
that's
suggested that we should get rid of private healthcare completely in the United States to wipe the industry out.
She walked that.
Yeah,
she walked it back.
I don't think that's good. I'm not really a huge fan of Kamala Harris for a few reasons, but that's not really, that doesn't really make sense.
Right. And then he was basically just shutting that down. And then, of course, she walked it back. And then Dick Durbin. And there's a ton of like Democrats that were like, yeah, that's crazy. And she walked it right back. But I mean, all the quotes that you're hearing, too, are always a couple days old.
Just the thing that I don't like about that Starbucks billionaire guy is that he shit talks the two sides as if he's not going to have to work with them if he gets elected to president. Like, he's an independent, sure, but he's still going to have them in the Senate. So I think it's kind of weird that he is just constantly talking shit about how bad the Republicans and Democrats are, given like, if you want to get any bills passed when you're in, though, this is the people you have to negotiate with.
Think about it this way, Claudia. Right now, I have to vote for someone who's shit or shittier. Okay. And you kind of you're like, fuck me, you kind of lose hope at that point. Now all of a sudden,
and then you fill in your bubble,
or you don't go. So hypothetically, and I don't know what kind of policy positions he's going to take. Very important what he stands on for Israel. But let's hypothetically say that this guy runs, and I like his policy positions. Okay. Whether he works with Democrats and Republicans or whether he changes the landscape, doesn't matter. Now there's a role model, almost like in 2008. Now little black kids had a role model for now they could be president, right? Now I know that there's a hope that centrism has a lane, right? You've created a lane for someone else to run, for other people to get into that party. Maybe he names his stupid party something different, whatever it is. Now that's it. You've blazed a new trail. Now you give people hope to be centrist, because right now the only hope that you have is to be a far right or a far left partisan hack, and that's it.
We got a lot of those.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, like maybe you're right, Claudia, that insulting these people isn't a good idea. I guess to me, politics is all about insulting these people, and then you have to go work with them. So I think that it comes down to deal making, and that if you cut the guy and like start supporting his proposals, the bitterest of enemy is now your ally. So to me, like,
true.
I'm just saying it's going to come down to what he's proposing and whether people are going to buy it. So
it's just that there's a problem with them not having connections, just because of, the thing is with Trump is he got Pence involved because Pence had the connections. Pence had years and years and years of dealing with these people and, making allies and that sort of thing. So Pence is the one who appointed a lot of his staff. And
wait, are you trying to say that Pence has helped bridge the divide? Because I will dispel that myth so fast.
Oh, no. I'm saying that with Trump, he didn't really have the connections, so he couldn't really put people in charge of things because he didn't really know who was good or not or whatever. He just kind of took Pence's word for a lot of that, and just kind of, Pence was basically in charge of the staffing, it seems like. And I feel like with an independent candidate who's a billionaire, who hasn't worked with this group of people.
Know. Trump wasn't necessarily respecting it. He'd be like, who the fuck is this guy? And then say,
of course,
and throw people out.
I'm going to disagree with all of that, because it's not like you need a degree or any type of experience. I mean, frankly, Obama didn't have a lot of experience before he became president. And the fact is that if you're a career politician, Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, Obama's a very good politician. Trump is not.
Sure. That's not the point I'm making. The point is, Claudia, you're making the point, oh, well, I don't want someone who's inexperienced. The fuck you don't. You 100% want someone who you're going to come in, like where I work. They're like, oh, well, this is the way that we've been doing things for the past, 15 years. Okay. That means shit. Because is it a good way to do things? Maybe. Is there a better way? Okay, well, the way that we've been doing things is not a good argument for anything.
Well, it's more that how are you going to choose who's going to be on your staff and stuff? Because isn't he going to be picking from the current litter of people? Like,
no, not at all.
He has all the best people.
I mean, that's the thing that concerns me about an independent candidate, is if he's not going to appoint Democrats or Republicans or whatever, who's he going to be appointing for all these roles? Like, is it just going to be his mates? Like,
no. Well, you would hope. We don't know yet, but you would hope that he's saying, I've got a reason for every appointment that I think this person is the best for the job. You would hope.
I give you a really good example. Some of the more successful companies that are coming up now. There's one specific. There's a technology company that's in Wisconsin, which is one of the, I guess, industry leading, one of the nation's premier technology companies. When they hire people for some roles, they'll be like, "Oh, do you have a degree in computer science?" Okay, if it's coding, if it's a hard skill like that, sure. But for a lot of their roles, they go, "Are you a smart person? Take this test. If you score high on this test, if you prove your just aptitude at fucking life, okay, or math, reading, whatever it is, we will train you to do whatever it is that we need to." The same thing should apply in government. You don't need a partisan hack to go in there and, well, I've been doing this for 10 years and I know who to talk to at whatever office. You just need someone who's going to be smart. And frankly, if Schultz or whatever his name is, Howard
Schultz,
yeah, that guy. If that's the way that he would hire staff, then I would 100% be in favor of that, rather than going, well, I know the ropes because I've been in Washington, D.C. for 20 years.
Well, I mean, that's not the only selling point. It's just like, I mean, if he were to say, okay, I'll get some right-leaning Democrats and some left-leaning Republicans on my staff, these people seem okay. Like Nancy Pelosi, she's all right because she's sort of a kind of right-leaning Democrat, and this guy from the Republicans, he's okay, he's kind of left-leaning Republican or whatever, we'll bring this together and make a kind of centrist party or whatever. That like, okay, that's an actual sort of position on things. It just seems a little bit like we kind of had this problem before with Trump, where he's like this billionaire outsider and people thought, oh, he's going to shake things up and change things, but he's just kind of beholden to the Republicans because he tied himself to them. And
I think he's beholden to himself. I mean, he pisses off Republicans all the time. They're telling him what to do, and he just won't do it.
Claudia has a good point. I mean, look at this Bible literacy thing that he just endorsed like yesterday or the day before.
This makes no sense. I don't know where he's getting this stuff. Like
someone Pence or whoever.
I guess.
You know.
Yeah. I think Pence is probably calling the shots on a lot of this stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if Pence had a role in
Pence
all
would
of
have
this.
told him, all right, shut up about the Mueller pull-up, and then he just like fires things out, right? Like his lawyers are saying, hey, you're under investigation. You probably shut up. But he won't shut up. So I'd like, who does he honestly listen to?
I don't think anybody really.
Yeah.
He just kind of does whatever the fuck he wants.
I agree. In that this is kind of the ridiculous narcissism. So like yes, he's a billionaire and so is Schultz, but
no. I'm not saying
like
that like they're the same.
Man, Trump is not. Trump is
like I have less of a problem with Schultz as a candidate than Trump, but I have an issue with him blaming the shutdown on anyone but Trump, to be honest, because he blamed it on the Democrats as well. But Trump only gave the Democrats one option: do literally everything that I say, or else.
No, he said that he was open for a wall. He said, "Look, I must have a wall," but he said, "I'm willing to trade anything potentially for it. Give me some offers." And they were like, "No, we won't do a wall." Like,
well, I mean they said we want to negotiate on. Well, I mean, a wall is a disaster for a number of reasons. Ecologically, it's horrible for the area. Already there are parts of that area that flood and kill the native wildlife because there's several species that are going to be at risk if you make this wall. That's something nobody ever talks about that annoys me. Like, I wish we'd talk about the ecological side of this dumb wall. It's not actually going to help anything.
No, that's the more important.
This is the first time I've ever heard that argument.
Well, because there's so few. Okay, granted, I don't want to.
I'll
care about.
But there are parts. Okay, what if the wall is such a big deal? Why don't we tear down the parts of the wall that already exist? Like, why aren't Democrats?
I would want to do that personally. I agree. Like, I mean, I don't know about the Democrats, but I think that would actually be a good idea because it's actually damaging to this ecological area. I'm going to paste the link here. There we go. Okay, so I've pasted the link to you guys. You can read through that if you want to.
So this, at least it's a sound argument that okay, we shouldn't do this because of ecological damage, but to say we will not support the wall for anything. Nothing will do it. Like, no, there's no price. Like, they should have just said, yeah, we want something, and just, I don't know, throw something insane on there and see if we'll bite. But they're saying no, we won't do the wall. And it's weird.
You have no idea. You weren't in these conversations. Maybe they did.
I've heard multiple people say that there was absolutely nothing. I heard
Pence went out to the Democrats. He negotiated with them. He got a deal where they were agreeing to fund $2 billion of the wall. And then he took that bill to Trump, and Trump said no. Trump went, no, I want the full $5 billion. This is the problem with him, is he refused to negotiate. They tried to compromise, but he's a nutcase. And this is the thing I get annoyed about when people blame the Dems, when it's like, no, he literally was just like, no, do everything I say or else I'll keep the shutdown going.
It blames, right? Anyone that blamed the Democrats only, I think I would be upset at. But to say it's 100% Trump's fault,
it is.
Right now, it's so polarized.
They tried to negotiate. Like, it is his fault because he didn't take the deals they offered, and he was the one who decided to shut it down. So I just don't see how it's anyone else's fault.
Now the Democrats
Pence
were like,
was
"Oh,
even
this
trying
is
to
the
get
only
the deal."
thing."
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because Claudia, I completely agree with you. It's it's a dumb idea for a variety of reasons. But what would you say to the argument? Listen, he ran on a particular campaign promise. He said, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then he gets elected, and he's saying, okay, based on the things that I got elected for, I'm going to follow through on those promises.
Well, maybe you should have thought of that 2 years ago. when he
Sure,
first
sure.
got elected.
No.
When there was a House majority of Republicans, maybe he should have thought of that
Yeah,
then.
but that doesn't change
probably
the
wouldn't have
ethics
passed
of the
then.
wall, though. But that does
I mean,
not change the ethics of
just
the
because
wall.
you made a campaign promise doesn't mean you're entitled to fulfilling that promise. Like, just because Obama said that he wanted healthcare doesn't mean he gets to put his foot down and say, no, literally everything has to be my way or it's the highway. That's
Wait,
not what
isn't that what he
politics
did?
is. I mean, yeah, he did shut
passed
down
the-
the government, but
And he
you
passed
know,
the ACA,
which is a huge piece
but
of
he also
unilateral.
negotiated.
No,
He actually
there were
sat
some
down and
things. There were some
negotiated.
Republican senators from Nebraska that were holding things up, and yeah, there was pieces that needed to get tweaked.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that
He was at least open to negotiate, and at least like healthcare is a bit more important than a fucking dumb wall that won't even stop.
Yeah, but
like these
that's
illegal people coming in.
it's way bigger. I agree, but that suggests that the Democrats should be like, well, we don't care, like, because there's just so many $5 billion programs that get funded. Like, to me, just I'm generally pro wall only because the border agents say that it will help. So again, I try to go with the experts in that case, and I guess I just don't see any reason why it's bad. If it creates an ecological disaster, you could tear it down. You could tear it down. I'm pro wall.
on the record.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the border agents
anti-immigration,
probably aren't the best judge as well, because I wouldn't really call them experts. Like, I mean, if you're a security guard and you think that, putting a 10-foot wall around the business is a good idea, no, the people who own the company inside that big, area, they're not going to be like, okay, guess we better build a 10-foot wall around the business.
Well, to me, it's like Secret Service, right? What this is, if it was Obama or Trump, whoever's president, says, well, what I need for security, he doesn't know. Secret Service is supposed to know what they need, right? And I would trust these guys; they're professionals. I'm trusting border security experts in the same way.
Brian,
they say
They're
they
not
will
experts.
help.
They're just border security agents who are randoms. They're not real. Like, the actual experts are saying, no. This wouldn't.
I would
help
think
anything.
that you.
Okay,
have
I'll get you some links.
But
Claudia, 100% agree with you on this. Brian, it's like asking a gas station attendant what the best possible way to pump
it's like
gas
asking a doctor that works in the hospital, what do you think equipment that we ought to buy?
We
do this all the time. You don't ask the patients.
It's like asking a janitor what the best equipment is for the okay. Let me give you a good example.
Devaluing these guys' jobs.
Yes, like and let me give you a very good example of this. Not an example, an explanation. The wall is a physical, it's a symbol. It's more symbolic than anything else. Well, hold on. To me, let me just
functional.
And then you can. It's not functional at all. So there's been a ton of debunking about the maintenance cost of this monstrosity and the fact that this is just a medieval way that you will never keep people out. Now, of course. Now, hold on. Well, now
you will limit it. The point is that this keeps everyone out. The point is it limits.
Listen,
to
Brian,
where border control agents can do what they need to do.
Before you disagree, we are living in the 21st century where you have ways of doing exactly what you're talking about that have nothing to do with a physical barrier. Case in point, if you built, pick a number out of your fucking hat, doesn't matter, 10,000 drones, and every one of these drones, just like a Roomba, would just fly in one line across the border, and they would just fly like this. And every time they're about to run out of batteries, they would come back to their little base and they would recharge and they would fly back. And as soon as they see movement, there's algorithms where you can identify that someone's a human being unless they wear a bush on their head.
You don't have enough border agents to deal with all this.
Hold on, Brian. You were out of your
and you don't think that immigrants are smart enough to know that the drones aren't going to do anything?
Come on. You think they're not smart enough to dig a hole under the wall or to come up?
Of course, they're smart enough to do that, but it's limiting.
Brian, hold on.
Most people actually tunneling is actually hard to do. Me and you couldn't tunnel.
Look,
we would need smart people to tunnel.
Stop. This
okay, your fake drones that do anything don't
this
do
argument
anything.
Is asinine. Hold on for a second. The drone is the first line. The drone identifies that a person is right here. Okay.
Right. And if no border agent is coming to get me, I don't care about the drone.
Jesus McChrist, hold on. The drone sees that the person is right there.
I just want a good life in America. I'm not stupid.
Stop it. They are following this person. it sends a signal to one of the border agents who's within.
And there's
10
not
miles.
enough of them.
But the wall.
So I get 3, and now I'm in America. Okay, great.
Fuck, the wall has nothing to do with.
I'm going to outcompete you and take your job.
Are you trolling me? Is this what you're doing?
I am. But I'm saying,
so isn't the legal immigration down in the US?
Wait, well, let's get Claudia in here. Like, Claudia, what do you make of this?
Isn't,
Are we
isn't
not
illegal immigration down compared to when it was in the 90s? Like, because wasn't it hasn't it gone from like millions coming over?
Yeah, there was a peak. It's come down. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't think we have accurate stats on this. I actually don't know. I don't think the stats are really.
We agree on the fact.
I mean,
that
you say you want to trust experts, but now you don't think the statisticians know what they're talking about.
Statistics? You're not allowed to. The census. We are not allowed to ask on the census if you are a legal citizen. That's actually being blocked.
Yeah, but it's about.
So how can we get accurate stats on people that are crossing border if we can't? Like, how are you going to get reliable data?
It's about arrests at the border because, the arrests at the border have gone way down.
Sure. But I mean people that are actually getting through and are living.
This
right?
is downstream from the argument.
Okay, even if one person gets through illegally and no one catches him or her.
Did they just get really good at illegal immigrating? Is that it?
How do we know? How can we ever get an accurate
count? Why do you
count?
care about counts? Here's
because she wants to know
if they're arrested at the border, like the only reason why less arrests would happen at the border is if either like they completely defunded the border security or if they suddenly became ninjas and were able to, evade all of these people at the border. It just doesn't really make sense.
Claudia, let me ask, here's the better question that gets to the root. Would you support an open border policy? Are you
no?
Okay, right. All right. So that we've established that
she's not left of Lenin.
Not left of Lenin. So now we're not talking past each other. So we all agree that borders exist. Who the fuck cares the number of illegals, right? Because we agree that illegal people or illegal immigration should be curtailed, okay? Now we're just talking about methods.
Right.
You could either have the clinically moronic policy of putting up a thing and then going, when I see someone on this side, I will stop them, or saying, listen, when I see someone walking toward this thing, I will track them and then I will send a guy to intercept them at some point. Okay, we live in the 21st century. We are not in.
If the Border Patrol people were saying this, then I'd be all for it.
No, because they're just some guy. It's a gas station attendant.
It's kind of like asking a gas station attendant what they think of the rise.
This is like saying the doctors shouldn't get to pick their equipment.
Please. So Brian, so you're telling me that the average Border Patrol agent knows the fact that they have the ability to do drone technology?
Do you think the average nurse knows how to take care of their patients? Yes, I do. I believe in the average nurse. I believe in the average border agent.
Let me ask you this. Let's say that there is a technology out there that there's a better way. Stop it. We're almost done. There's a better way to treat a patient. There's some sort of medicine that just hasn't gone to buttfuck Buxton,
and good nurses will adopt this, right? Good medicine.
Let's say they just don't know that it's possible.
Okay, but then find me the border agents that are saying, I don't know this. Like, again, I trust the people that are in the trenches.
Oh, really? So there's been a a survey that's gone out to Border Patrol agents that said, hey, Joe Border Patrol agent, what would you prefer? A digital wall with drones or a physical wall that just stands there? This thing does this. It tracks people. It does this. This wall just sits here. There's been a question that's been asked, and they've chosen.
And you ask, first of all, every company asks their employees, what do you guys think? Right? Doesn't mean they always do it, but you'd better ask your employees what they think.
Claudia, I can't.
Do you think that principals don't ask their teachers what they think when they put in a new policy? Hell yes, they do. Now, they may push it down their throats anyways because they have to, but they ask.
You're behaving like Sean. Okay. You're avoiding the argument.
You're just, look, I am skeptical of some of the people that are saying that the wall won't work because I know they have obvious partisan objections. I trust the people in the trenches. Again, so show me a bunch of border agents that say the wall's a bad idea. that's how you get me out of my position.
Claudia, can we talk about Brian privilege? Because this is what's happening.
Am I wrong, Claudia? Like if Claudia wants to do it, that's great. Show me a bunch of border agents and people that have worked on the border that's saying a wall would not help. This is really stupid. That's how you convince me.
They don't have another option. They're not giving option A and option B. They're just giving option B. And they say, will option B work? Yes, compared to doing nothing,
Russian
option
privilege.
B will work.
All right, we're going to give you the final word, Claudia.
I think personally, it's not that the border control, like, I just don't think they've really got the relevant expertise to make that call, just because what they're talking about, I think, is a bit different to, you know, like, I don't know. It's kind of like, if I'm a waitress or whatever, it doesn't mean that I know the best way to cook a steak or the best way to, you know, go about. Well, it's more also, it's not even on that level. It's like running the business at that point. Like, you're talking about running the border, and just because you know how to catch someone and release them at the border and stuff, like the catch and release sort of policy, doesn't really mean you know the best ways. Like, I feel like there's people higher up who know more of what the options are and that are available, and maybe as he was saying, like, maybe it's more that they just need other options to think about rather than a big wall, where I think Trump has just gone straight for the wall and not really considered any other options. And that's part of the problem I had when he was doing the shutdown for a wall, because he wasn't willing to negotiate. And, you know, the thing is, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, I think, were talking about things like drones, like he was saying. And, you know, I just don't think he even considered any of it, which I think is kind of a mistake when you're talking about border security. Like, why not consider what the other side is talking about? Because it's not that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer don't want border security. And I think it's kind of disingenuous to say they don't want any when they're saying, no, we want different technology used, because this is kind of medieval, putting up a big ass wall, expecting it to work when, you know, we could use other methods.
No, that's fair. And that you're taking people again at their best word. So we really appreciate it. And I think this is great. So I just want to end on this. This is a great example of Twitter actually doing really well, because we ran into each other on Twitter, got into it a little bit, but then ended up having a pretty good conversation, talked in the DMs that we should do a stream sometime. And I think it worked out. So
yeah, I'm really glad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Claudia. And we didn't even get to I mean, I think we had a really awesome conversation. We didn't even get to a bunch of topics. So for sure, we will, you know, we'll do this again. We love the fact that you're still, you know, releasing videos and that you're talking about this. You're incredibly reasonable, which is so missing in dialogue. There was even a guy in the chat that you know, saying he's a right winger and he's followed you for years. So the fact that you can bridge that divide, and I think you mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation, is incredible. And you're exactly the type of, you know, left-leaning conversationalist that we're missing.
That you can learn from, and that's the thing. If you,
Brian, that you,
if
can
you're nice at all, right? If you're not a dick, if you're not a bitch, like, she'll talk to you. It's at Ranting F on Twitter. It's great, and this is you want to be able to talk to people that have different opinions that also don't jump down your throat, and you want them, and that's great.
Yeah, Claudia, do you have anything coming up specific, like any projects or anything that you're looking forward to? Or
I have 2 videos I'm editing, but I'm so lazy with editing. I hate editing. So,
farm that out to one of these women who's sitting at home taking care of their children.
Hey, I could outsource it. No worries. Yeah.
Give them something
I
to
could
do.
Be like, hey, you poor oppressed woman, let me come in and swoop in and save you from your oppression. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I like joking self-deprecatingly. I like that you guys have a sense of humor, so I can do that without you guys going, ha, proved it. Hi, gotcha.
No. You're definitely allowed to joke around.
We have a good reputation in the community. So thank you so much, Claudia. We'll talk to you very soon. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.